Hey guys, it's Xander here, and welcome back to another episode of Deck Doctor. This is a modern Infect deck submitted by one Deaththekid 369, and I'm going to touch on his main board here, talk about his sideboard, and then I'm going to go over what I did to improve the deck. Hey guys, it's Xander here, and welcome back to another episode of Deck Doctor. This is a modern Infect deck submitted by one Deaththekid 369, and I'm going to touch over the main deck here, talk about his sideboard. I'm then going to do the improved version of it for modern that I've got, and then he was trying to get to, or the closest as he could to, a turn 1 Infect kill, so I'll show that at the end. And let's start off the lineup. Birds of Paradise for 1 green is a 0/1 bird with flying, and it's got tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is obviously the budget version of Noble Hierarch, which is usually ran in the modern Infect decks, but it does have the added advantage of Exalted, which means anytime you attack with a creature by itself, it gets an additional +1/+1, especially with Infect. Being able to get any amount of pluses or bonuses onto your creatures just puts you even closer to that 10 poison counter clock. So Birds of Paradise, obviously a good card, gets you that little bit of extra ramp. Not being as good as a $100 card still doesn't mean it's bad. Start off the lineup for the Infect creatures. We're running 4 copies of Blighted Agent, which is for 2, 1 and a blue. It's a 1/1 human rogue with Infect, and it's unblockable. One of the favorites for what you'd normally see in the modern Infect deck, and an absolute all-star with the unblockable, just making it that much harder for your opponent to have any kind of interaction between you getting your 10 poison counters and getting the win. The other must-have in any kind of Infect deck is the 4 of Glistener Elf, which is for 1 green, a 1/1 Elf Warrior with Infect, and in this version he's also running 2 copies of Ichaclaw Myr, which is for 2, a 1/1 Myr with Infect, and whenever it becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. One of the immediate things I noticed in this list is he's not running any of the man lands that can turn into the flying Infect creatures. That is going to hurt you a little bit, just straight off the bat. Obviously, I think budget's a bit of an issue with this deck, so I don't think I added them in the improved version at all either. So we'll kind of stick with more of a budget theme with this. But yeah, the Ichaclaw, a really good Infect creature. I love the fact that it gets +2/+2 if it becomes blocked. At a 2 cost, especially for a budget deck, it's still a really good Infect creature. 3 copies of Simeon's Spirit Guide, which is for 3, 2 and a red. It's a 2/2 ape spirit, but you can remove it from your hand from the game and add 1 red mana to your mana pool, which gives you a little bit of extra ramp in the deck. With your creatures swinging in with Infect, you're trying to get them to as close to 10 power as you can. To do that, you need to be running a lot of buff spells, so we're running 4 copies of Mutagenic Growth, which is for Phyrexian green, so either 1 green or pay 2 life. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn at instant speed. Groundswell, another great card. At 1 green at instant speed, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It also has landfall, so if you had a land enter the battlefield, it gets +4/+4 instead. Vines of Vastwood. For 1 green at instant speed, it's got Kicker 1 green. Target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control, and if Vines of Vastwood was kicked, the creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. So for 2, it's +4/+4, and it's protection for our creature. These creatures, the whole Infect deck, the creatures are going to paint huge targets on their head, so they are going to be trying to hit them with whatever removal they've got as soon as they've got it. So Vines of Vastwood, really good. Adding to the protection and to the buffs, we're also running 4 copies of Blossoming Defense, which is for 1 green. At instant speed, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. The next card's something I wasn't really expecting to see in the modern Infect deck, and that's the 4 of Cartouche of Zeal, which is for 1 red. It's an enchantment aura. You enchant a creature you control, and then when it enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn, and the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. It could have some advantages, but it's not something that you'd usually see in this style of deck. Going back to other cards that you would normally see in the deck, with running 3 copies of Apostle's Blessing, which is for 2, so 1 or Phyrexian white, so either pay 2 life or pay 1 white. At instant speed, target artifact or creature you control gains protection from artifacts, or from the color of your choice until end of turn. So this is another way to give our creature protection, as well as being able to swing in past their creatures. Basically, pseudo-unblockable, because they can't block anything that we have protection from. Also running 2 copies of Become Immense, for 6, 5 and 1 green at instant speed. It's a really steep price, but it does have Delve, so you can exile a number of cards from your graveyard and make this cost 1 less for each that you do, and target creature gets +6/+6 until end of turn. At instant speed, +6 buff, insanely good. It's not something that you want to have in your hand all the time, because having to get to 5 cards in our graveyard to remove them isn't always going to be the easiest thing, but it is a really good card. Touching on his land base here, he's running 4 forests, 2 mountains, a single plains, 2 islands, 2 copies of Temple Garden, which is a forest plains, comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life, 2 copies of Breeding Pool, which is a forest island, comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life. Single copy of Stomping Grounds, the same thing but mountain forest. 2 copies of Wooded Foothills, which is tap, pay 1 life, sack, search your library for a forest or a mountain. A single copy of Windswept Heath, which is the same thing but for forest or plains. And Misty Rainforest, which is the same thing but forest or island. The main deck, obviously it's not the tweaked tier 1 or whatever it is now of the normal modern Infect deck, but as far as just a scratch built, casual play deck goes, this would be pretty solid. It's got a hell of a lot of protection in it. It's got a good bit of ramp. It's got plenty of the buffs in there, and it's got ways to fetch out some of the lands and thin the deck out. So I think the main deck's pretty solid. Just touching on his sideboard here, he's running 3 copies of Path to Exile. For 1 white, at instant speed, you exile a target creature. Its controller can search their library for a basic land card, put that card into play tapped, then shuffle their library. Spellkite, another kind of pseudo protection in the deck. For 2 colorless, it's a 0/4 artifact creature horror with Phyrexian Blue. Change the target of target spell or ability to Spellkite. If they go to play removal on one of your creatures, you can either pay 1 blue or pay 2 life and make it target the Spellkite instead. Against red, this can be an absolute nightmare because they can go, I lightning bolt it, and you go, no, it's hitting Spellkite instead, which it's not going to kill it anyway. So it's a really, really good card. Great, it's great in the sideboards for the Infect deck. 2 copies of Spell Pierce, a little bit of counter magic. For 1 blue, at instant speed, you counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. A lot of graveyard hate in this sideboard. 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus. For 1, it's an artifact sits on the battlefield, tap, target player removes a card from their graveyard from the game. Or you can pay 1, remove Relic of Progenitus from the game, and remove all graveyards from the game and draw a card. 2 copies of Ravenous Trap, which is for 4, 2 and 2 black. At instant speed, if an opponent had 3 or more cards put into the graveyard from anywhere this turn, you can play 0 rather than pay its cost, and you exile all cards from target player's graveyard. I actually really, really like this card in the current format at the moment. With so many Thing in the Ice, Phoenix decks, just graveyard retrieval monsters that are in modern at the moment. Just being able to go for 0, no, you don't get any of those. Insanely cool. To finish out his graveyard hate, he's also running 2 copies of Grafdigger's Cage, which is for 1. It's an artifact that sits on the battlefield, and creature cards can't enter the battlefield from graveyards or libraries, and players can't cast cards in graveyards or libraries. We're also running 2 copies of Nature's Claim for the artifact or enchantment hate. So it's destroy target artifact or enchantment for 1 green at instant speed, and its control gains 4 life. Great bit of removal in the deck, and it helps with a lot of stuff that's in modern at the moment. That is his sideboard and his main board. As a casual put together Infect deck, I actually like it a lot. I've got a green-red Infect deck just because I wanted to be funny with it, and I've taken a lot of inspiration from my deck and kind of translated it into what he's trying to do here, and we'll see what I did to hopefully improve his version of the deck. We can see here I've kept a lot of it the same. I've added a couple of new toys and changed the land base a bit to suit better to what the deck was doing. Pretty much stuck to what the deck was originally. I've added a few more of the same cards that he had in his deck. I've taken some of his cards out and added some inspiration from what is my original red-green Infect deck. I'll just touch over the tweaks here. A bit of tweaks to the land base, and the sideboard remains mostly unchanged. Sticking with the 4 copies of Blighted Agent. Really good card, absolute all-star. Bumped it up to 4 copies of the Ichor Mer. We want to be reliably running as many Infect creatures into it as possible. If you're not going to be running the manlands, you do need to be running the extra Infect creatures. And I've got that in the form of the Ichor, still running the 4 copies of Glistener, and added 2 copies of Blight Mamba in here, which is for 2. It's a 1/1 snake with Infect, and it's also got for 2 Regenerate It. So it's a little bit more survivable, but obviously if you wanted to bring this deck to be a little bit more competitive, you're going to be blowing up your budget a bit by adding like your Noble Hierarchs to add ramp and buffs. And you want to be adding those manlands in because it is adding a infecting flyer to the deck. Definitely worth looking into if that's what you want to do. If you want to make this deck a little bit more competitive, I definitely suggest that. The way that I've done this one, it's sticking to a little bit more of a budget. Bumped up to 4 copies of the Simian Spirit Guide. In the old version, the Simian Spirit Guides, I could only see them being in there to be able to ramp and add the enchantment, the cartouche, which I've actually taken out of this version of the deck. In this version of the deck, I've added them in there as the ramp so that we can play stuff like Colossal Might, which is something that I've got in my red-green version. So Colossal Might is for 2, a red and a green. Target creature gets +4/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So if the creature isn't unblockable, like the Blooded Agent, or if we give it protection from the Apostle's Blessing, if it's not unblockable, then if it does get blocked, this means it doesn't matter because we're still going to be trampling over with damage. So if we can throw stuff like Colossal Might onto Ichor Claw Myr, it's getting blocked, it's 3/3, it's getting +4, it's swinging in with 7 power. We throw a Mutagenic Growth or throw a Vines, it's already swinging in for lethal, especially if it's in the early game. Because we could be doing this on turn 2 or 3, depending on whether or not we can ramp out the Ichor Claw. Could be playing a land on turn 1, removing a Simian from our hand, adding the red, playing that out on turn 1, turn 2, swinging in with this, adding the buffs, and we get there pretty quickly. It's not too of an outrageous idea to be thinking about a turn 3 kill with this. Still keeping the 4 copies of Mutagenic Growth, still keeping the 4 copies of Vines of Vastwood. The protection from it's insanely good, the +4 is always great. Same with the Blossoming Defense, definitely want to be keeping that. The other card that I've added in from my version of the deck is the 4 copies of Tamer Battle Rage, which is for 2, 1 and a red at instant speed. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn, but it also has Ferocious, so that creature also gains trample until end of turn if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. This card, to me, as a combat trick, has proven time and time again that it's insanely good. A lot of the time with Infect, knowing when to cast cards and knowing when to hold your protection is going to be a big part of how you play the deck out, but Team of Battle Rage, insanely good. In my original version of my deck, I wasn't running Team of Battle Rage only because I didn't have the card, but I was running 4 copies of Assault Strobe, which again would be a super budget option. It's just for 1 red at sorcery speed. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Just double strike by itself can be really, really useful. It doesn't matter if it's at sorcery speed, because if they're going to try and kill it, they're going to try and kill it, and we either have the protection for it or we don't. It's as simple as that. Because I've put in the 4 copies of the Team of Battle Rage, and because we've added in the Colossal Might, we've taken out a couple of the copies of the Groundswell and 1 of the Apostle's Blessing. Land base tweaked a little bit. Go on to 3 copies of the Blood Pool. Go on to 3 copies of the Breeding Pool. 3 copies of the Stomping Ground. 3 copies of the Wooded Foothills. 3 copies of the Misty Rainforest. 2 copies of Hinterland Harbour. Comes in tapped unless you control a forest or island. 2 copies of Rootbound Crag, which comes in tapped unless you control a mountain or forest. And 2 forests. The sideboard, as I've said, pretty much the same. I've just taken away the Path to Exiles because we've taken out the stuff that can generate the white mana. I've put the Become Immenses into the sideboard here, just on the off chance that it's the more grindy matchups and we're more likely to get those cards into the graveyard. That's when the Become Immense can come back into the deck. The single copy of the Assault Strobe, just sitting in the sideboard there, more to show you the Team of Battle Rage alternative that was in the deck. That is the sideboard and the main board of Modern Infect. Obviously, if you wanted to blow your budget out, you could just copy whatever the tier 1 or tier 2 deck is. Just go for the green-blue, add in your nobles, add in the manlands. The deck's insane. This deck, although not quite as good, has a hell of a lot of punch potential. Just being able to come out of nowhere and smash them in the face for a shitload of damage. Team of Battle Rage, absolute all-star, Colossal Might, great card. Infect's a hell of a lot of fun to play, and I hope he enjoys this version of the deck. Then the other thing I've got to show you now is the Turn 1 Infect. Originally had this as a legacy deck, running Lotus Petals, but I've actually figured out a way to make it a modern legal deck. This is not a good deck. Hands down, not a good deck. But this is the way that I could come up with getting a Turn 1 kill with Infect. So we're just going to talk about what cards are in the deck, and then I'm going to explain how the actual Turn 1 kill happens. So to start off the lineup, we've got 4 copies of Chancellor of the Forge, which is 4/7, 4 and 3 red. It's a 5/5 giant. You may reveal this card from your opening hand. If you do, at the beginning of your first upkeep, you get a 1/1 goblin with haste onto the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, you put X 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures you control. It's its first ability to get the 1/1 goblin haste onto the battlefield that we care about, so ignore the rest of the card. That's what we want. 4 copies of Street Wraith, just being able to cycle, being able to pay 2 life, cycle, draw a card, try to get into our combo pieces more often. Some added ramp through Simian Spirit Guide, which we had in the last couple of decks, being able to remove from your hand to add red mana to your mana pool. 4 copies of Monastery Swift Spear, which is for 1 red. It's a 1/2 human monk with haste and prowess. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. 4 copies of Memnite, which is for 0, a 1/1 artifact creature construct. 4 copies of Assault Strobe, which is for 1 red at sorcery speed. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. 3 copies of Serum Powder. Now this is one of the really big pieces that enables this to maybe be a little bit better than I think it is. So that's for 3, it's an artifact. It's got tap, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. But the bit tacked onto the end is the bit we care about. So it's any time you could mulligan and Serum Powder is in your hand, you may remove your hand from the game and then draw that many cards. So we don't draw any less cards with our mulligan, which means we get more chances to find our combo pieces and get the ideal hand. Because this is such a glass cannon, it's a one-trick pony. It is just trying to get the Magical Christmas opening hand and then win straight off the bat. Serum Powder is the only thing that I could think of that can help us maybe reliably get to that. It's still going to be a bust a whole lot of the time. You're trying to go for a turn 1 Infect kill. Outside of that, the deck's really, really flimsy. Again, not a good deck. Trying to get the turn 1 kill, that's what's important. 4 copies of Metamorphose, which is for 2, 1, and hybrid, either green or red. At instant speed, you add 2 mana in any combination to your mana pool, and you draw a card. Again, adding to our ability to filter through our deck, draw into our combo pieces. It's a really, really good card for what we're trying to do. 4 copies of Titan's Strength, which is for 1 red. At instant speed, target creature gets +3/+1 until in a turn, and scry 1. Again, being able to filter off the top if we want to play more draw card after it. 4 copies of Tainted Strike, which is for 1 black. At instant speed, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains Infect until in a turn. This is the Infect source in the deck. If we do not have this in our opening hand, we do not win. This is the absolute glass cannon. This is the silver bullet. This is everything the deck is trying to do, is get this card in its hand, make whatever our creature is big enough to deal 10 damage. So if we throw this on a Monastery Swift Spear, it's a non-creature spell, so it's getting +1 from the prowess. So it's a 1 power guy. It's getting +1 from this. It's a 2 power guy. It's getting +1 from the actual card. It's a 3 power guy. We've already played Assault Strobe to make it a 4 power guy. And then all we need is one other spell to make it a 5 power guy with double strike, swinging in for Infect. That's the glass cannon. That is the Magical Christmas. That is turn 1 Infect Death. Mutagenic Growth in a 4 of. Something else adding to our buffs that we can play. Dirt cheap. Phyrexian Green, instant speed +2/+2. And 4 copies of Infernal Plunge, which is for 1 red. At sorcery speed, as an additional cost to play it, you sacrifice a creature. You add 3 red mana to your mana pool. So either through for 0 playing your Mem Knight or starting off with the Chancellor, adding the red mana, being able to ramp into stuff like Assault Strobe or Titan Strength or Metamorphose, adding to the prowess, adding to the buffs, going further into the deck. The Simeon's in there for the ramp. The Plunge is in there for the ramp. The Mem Knight's in there just to be sacrificed. If we haven't got the Monastery Swift Spear, but we do have the Assault Strobe, just having enough buffs to make the 1/1 Goblin swinging in with 5 attack and haste, still going to be enough to do it. Adding to our mana plan and trying to shore up extra mana on turn 1, we're also running 4 copies of Gemstone Caverns, which is a legendary land. If Gemstone Caverns is in your opening hand, if you're not playing first, you may begin the game with Gemstone Caverns in play with a luck counter on it. If you do, remove a card from your hand from the game, and then it's got tap, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. But if Gemstone Caverns has a luck counter on it, it instead adds 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So we can start the game with a land on the battlefield, and then turn 1 we can play a land. It's just another way for us to add early ramp in the game. 4 copies of Mana Confluence, which is pay 1 life to add 1 color of any mana. 4 copies of Sulphur Springs, which is tap, add black or red at the cost of dealing 1 damage to you. And 4 copies of Blackcleave Cliffs, which comes in tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands, tap for black or red. Just going over it again, the cards that we will need will be at least the Assault Strobe, the Tainted Strike, and either the Monastery Swift Spear or a Chancellor of the Forge in our opening hand, and then enough buffs to be able to get that to 5 power with double strike. Again, not a good deck. It's a bit of a laugh. I ended up getting there in the end with being able to get to a turn 1 kill. I didn't even think it was possible, but yeah, we can get there. I challenge anybody that can get a chance to test it out, see if it works. It looks like a hell of a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you're having trouble with it list and you want me to check it out, just drop it in the comments below. Let me know what you want done with the deck, and I'll add it to the ever-growing list of decks to go to the Deck Doctor series. Had a hell of a lot of fun putting this one together. Hopefully, Deaththekid, you enjoy the deck, and let me know what you think.
Thanks for watching, guys. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to see new videos as they were released. If you like what I do and you want to support the channel, you can throw me $1 on my Patreon at patreon.com/ZandersQuest. And I will see you guys in the next video. Keep questing, guys.